Hello everyone, Ryan here again. So I recently checked out even more books from my local library. Uh, just I really couldn't resist. I mean, hey, that's you know, uh, libraries are very good. Well, I would say libraries are definitely an awesome resource for books, movies, music. Uh, there's just so much untapped knowledge to be found there. So, uh, yeah, uh, that's that's one thing I've been trying to do a lot more often is encourage people to visit their local library as often as possible. Um, Especially now with current events, there's this whole presidential election going on, and it just seems like far too many people aren't really educated about how our government works, how the electoral process works. Uh, and not only that, I mean, to me, it just seems like people just tend to follow the crowd and they just cling to whatever philosophy, whatever ideal is the easiest to understand. And I don't know, for me, just because it's easy to understand, that doesn't always mean it's the right choice. But that's how I feel. I don't want to go off onto another tangent, so because this is just another library book haul video. So, but I'll save it for another video. So, uh, anyways, uh, one of the first books I checked out is titled "This Is Where It Ends," of course by Marie Nijkamp or Nijkamp. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of other booktubers read this and review this. Seems to be a lot of mixed reviews on it. I've been wanting to read it for some time. It took me a while to get a copy of it from my local library. But yeah, I'm glad that they finally responded to my request. So this is where it ends. Next one I checked out was also a new one. It's nonfiction. It's titled "My Father the Pornographer." And it's a memoir by Chris Offutt or Offutt. Uh, so yeah, it's pretty much about this guy. He one day it's after his father had passed away, and he goes to clean out his father's house, and I don't know if he finds some stuff in the basement or the attic or maybe both. But yeah, he finds out that his father, for like over 30 plus years, was this writer of pornography, of adult books. And he learns that, yeah, and the entire time his dad was alive throughout his lifetime, I think pretty much from his early 30s until his health declined in his like 70s, I believe, 60s or 70s. During that whole time, he wrote something like over 800 adult books. And so, yeah, and he didn't know that because his father kept it very well hidden. Uh, Seemed very interesting to me. I don't know. And I really haven't seen any booktubers or anybody on YouTube review this book or talk about it. Um, yeah, I don't know. It seemed interesting to me. So, my father a pornographer. Next one I got is another nonfiction. It's titled "To Explain the World: The Discovery of Modern Medicine." It's by Steven Weinberg, and it's a fairly new book. I believe it was published in. What is it? Yeah, it was published last year, sometime last year. It's pretty much just about, I guess you could say, the history of uh, science and the fact that during each generation would make a certain amount of discoveries, and the next generation would make another certain amount of discoveries, and so on and so on and so on. And also deals with the fact that a lot of the new innovations and even technological innovations during the time that they were first discovered or first created, invented, a lot of people really didn't bother paying too much attention as to how these things worked, and it wasn't until the next generation that the next generation then became more intrigued by the scientific discoveries of the previous generation. So yeah, and that's one of the things that the author points out a lot. So I haven't really read that much into it. I mean, I've just skimmed through it. Seems like a decent sized book. So yeah, it seemed interesting to me. So next one is pretty popular. I don't know, well, infamous. The Communist Manifesto, of course, by Karl Marx. And but this is the Communist Manifesto and Other Writings by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. And now, of course, I don't consider myself to be a communist. I don't really consider myself to be anything other than a human being. And, but no, I mean, the Communist Manifesto is something that I've always wanted to read. Never really gotten around to doing it. So, yeah. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I know about it is that as far as what the original, I guess you could say, vision that Karl Marx had in mind ended up being twisted, distorted, used to manipulate people. And that's not really what he had envisioned. That's not really what he wanted to happen with the communism in general. So next one I checked out is a biographical graphic novel. It's titled Che. Of course, it's about the revolutionist Che Guevara. It's another one, another guy. Well, I never really read that much. There's an old receipt in here. But so Che Guevara, got tongue tied there. Che Guevara, he's one of those guys that I've been wanting to read about for a while. And I know a lot of people have mixed opinions on him. Some say he was, this great revolutionary thinker. Also, he fought for human rights and civil rights for his own people. And of course, a lot of people, still other people, say he was a murderer, a traitor, so forth and so on. But yeah, I was surprised that there's actually a graphic novel about him. Definitely looks interesting, and it looks very thorough. There's just some examples of the artwork. I don't know if you can really see most of the details. But yeah, it looked interesting to me, so I checked it out. Next one I checked out follows along the same lines of revolutionary thinking. It's by Russell Brand, the comedian, popular comedian Russell Brand. It's titled Revolution. And I never read anything by Russell Brand. I've seen a lot of his stand-up. I've seen him when he made different appearances on various talk shows. But at the same time, I know that he also happens to be one for, what's the word? He believes in great societal change, I guess you could say. Yeah. And he also believes in educating the masses, making people much more well-informed, encouraging people to really think about their everyday lives, but also how the things like government and institutions affect people's everyday lives. So, and that's what I like too. That's what I believe in too. I believe that we all should be much more well informed about everything that goes on around us and everything that has a very big influence on our way of life. Even though, granted, yeah, I know a lot of times that it can be tough. It can be hard to really analyze all these different things, and even just for the briefest moment, consider that maybe this one part of the government is wrong, or maybe this institution is wrong, or maybe they can do things a little differently. That's pretty much what Russell Brand talks about, deals with in this book. So, of course, I haven't read it yet. I mean, it's just another one that I've just barely skimmed through. So, it looks interesting enough to me. I just fell down. So the last one I checked out is titled Opening Skinner's Box, Great Psychological Experiments of the 20th Century. It's by Lauren Slater. So I like the cover. Of course, I didn't check this book out just for the cover. But to me, it's like this walnut symbolizes the human mind, but also everything that encompasses human existence. Cracking open this walnut, this symbolic walnut. I don't know. I might be reading too much into it, but that's... But then, of course, on the back it shows when it's already cracked open. I don't know, to me it looks very similar to the human brain. But, so yeah, I mean, but this book was published, I believe, sometime in 2003, 2004. All it is, it's about, of course, it's nonfiction, but it's a retelling of several different psychological and sociological experiments that different sociologists and psychologists conducted. One of which being by the social scientist Stanley Milgram. If you're not familiar with him, I do recommend looking him up. Stanley Milgram, he was a guy that he created this experiment in which he had two people participate. One person was a student, the other person was a teacher. The student went into this separate booth, and the teacher went out into this other room where there was this like box. This box there, and Stanley Milgram told this person who was a teacher that this box was capable of administering electrical shocks to the person who was the student. And anytime the person who was the student got a question wrong, or rather, because the person who was a teacher would ask a question. If the student got it wrong, or even if they took too long to answer, then the person who was a teacher would flip a switch on this device, and which would then supposedly administer this electrical shock. And it went all the way up to like 450 volts of electricity. But of course, they didn't know that this was all pretend. The person who was a student was in on the whole thing, and they would just act like if they were being shocked. They'd be like, or I remember I read about one guy even pretended to be on the verge of having a heart attack. And it was actually a very interesting sociological experiment. I mean, I could go into great detail about it. There's a movie about it. It's titled The Experimenter, I believe. But so essentially, the main objective of this experiment was pretty much to test the limits of how quickly people give in to conformity, how quickly people succumb to, I guess you could say, peer pressure, the need to fit in with the rest of society. But also, too, at the same time, for Stanley Milgram, it was his own way of trying to understand why during World War II, so many Nazis were, they, so many Nazis contributed to the deaths of so many Jewish people. And for the ones that were put on trial, and a lot of them in court, when they testified, they pretty much said that they were just following orders, and they never saw anything wrong with following orders. So the same kind of, I guess, reasoning. I mean, Stanley Milgram, he wanted to understand that, I mean, his parents were lucky enough to leave Germany just a couple months before the Nazis, started rounding up Jewish people. But he had a lot of relatives who were unfortunately rounded up, tortured, and killed by Nazis. So, yeah, pretty much Stanley Milgram, his entire childhood, growing up into adulthood, he was told all of these stories by his parents and other relatives, also other Jewish people. So this experiment he made was kind of like followed along the same lines, in which those people who went all the way with the experiment, they really had no idea why they went, even though they had no idea. Like, to them, it was like they were dumbfounded by the fact that they actually agreed to participate in administering these electrical shocks to another human being, even though they knew, or rather they were told, that it was harming this other person. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's one of the things, of course, that's mentioned in this book. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I should talk about it a little more in depth in another video. But yeah, that's all right. So yeah, that'll do it for this library book haul video. Let me know if any of you have read or even just heard about any of these books that I mentioned. So yeah, that'll do it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you to everybody who's currently subscribed. I do appreciate it. So till next time, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.